At North Point Logistics Base, the front gate was a place most people treated like a nuisance, an unavoidable bottleneck between freedom and orders. Yet it was the one place where a single mistake could ripple across an entire installation. The morning was cold and bright, the kind where exhaust hung in the air like breath, and the inbound lane filled early with contractors, delivery trucks, and young service members rolling in with coffee cups and impatient eyes. Under the canopy light stood an old man nobody bothered to learn much about. Elderly American male, white beard trimmed close, weathered face, faded red shirt under a reflective vest, blue jeans, and worn boots that looked like they'd seen too many miles to be impressed by a new uniform. His job was simple: check IDs, verify passes, watch the lane, wave vehicles through. He did it with quiet precision, scanning badges, matching faces, asking short questions, never raising his voice, never letting impatience hurry his hands. New MPs rotated onto the gate that week, trainees still eager to prove toughness, and to them the old contractor was an easy joke, someone outside the chain, someone they could mock without consequences. "Look at Grandpa," one trainee whispered, nodding at the old man's slow movements. "Man checks IDs like he's reading bedtime stories." Another smirked. "Bet he thinks the badge is a winning lottery ticket." They laughed just loud enough to be heard, but quiet enough to pretend it was harmless. The old man didn't react. He never did. He kept his eyes on the next driver, asked for ID, checked the expiration date, and returned it with a calm nod. That calm made the joke sharper. A trainee leaned toward his buddy. "If we get attacked, he'll stop it with a highlighter and a sigh." The group snickered. The old man heard them anyway and said nothing, because he'd learned long ago that arguing with pride was like arguing with weather, wasteful, loud, and rarely useful. He had his routine: glance at the license plate, check the driver's hands, watch eye contact, look for a story that didn't match the face telling it. Routine wasn't boredom to him. It was a net that caught small things before they became big ones. Mid-morning, the inbound traffic thickened, and the trainees grew lazy. They waved vehicles forward too quickly, joked with each other, and treated the scanner's green beep like a guarantee of safety rather than a single data point. The old man stayed methodical. When a white cargo van rolled up, unmarked except for a small rental sticker, he noticed the driver's hand tremor and the way the passenger kept his cap brim low. The trainee nearest the lane took the ID, barely looked at it, and turned away to laugh at something his buddy said. The old man stepped closer, not dramatic, just present. "Run it again," he said quietly. The trainee rolled his eyes. "It beeped green," he said, smug. "We're good." The old man didn't argue about the beep. He pointed at the photo. "That's not his face," he said simply. The trainee laughed like it was paranoia. "You got X-ray vision now," he muttered. The old man looked at the driver again and felt something in his gut tighten, not fear for himself, but the cold math of risk. "Ask him his sponsor," he said, voice low. "Ask him his building." The trainee's patience snapped. "You're not my supervisor," he hissed, loud enough for the driver to hear. The driver's eyes flicked toward the old man for half a second, too quick, too sharp, and then back to the trainee with a fake calm that didn't reach his jaw. The trainee waved the van forward anyway because arrogance loves the feeling of control. The old man raised a hand. "Hold," he said, firm now. The trainee ignored it, stepping aside. The van crept forward, and the old man's gaze flicked upward toward the fixed pole cameras above the canopy. Silent eyes that never laughed, never looked away, never got bored. In that instant, the old man made a decision he didn't want to make. He stepped to the gatehouse window and tapped the alert button. Not a full lockdown, just a discreet flag in the system. The trainee snapped, "What are you doing?" But the old man didn't answer. He watched the van pass the camera's field of view, watched the passenger's face angle just enough for the lens, and he knew the truth would be recorded whether anyone wanted it or not. The trainees were still smirking, still convinced the old man was slow and dramatic, until a sharp call came over the internal gate radio. "Gatehouse, freeze that last vehicle and pull the camera feed now. Keep listening, and which city are you listening from? And if you enjoy the story, please subscribe for more." The trainee's grin faltered as if someone had unplugged it, and for the first time that morning, the gate lane felt less like a routine checkpoint and more like a trapdoor waiting to drop. The van had already cleared the canopy and was rolling toward the inner barrier, where a second checkpoint separated public access from the controlled side of the base, and the trainee nearest the lane shouted into his handheld radio, trying to sound authoritative. "Control, this is Gate 1, what's the issue?" The reply came clipped and urgent. "Camera feed flagged mismatch. Stop that van before it reaches inner control." The trainee's face drained of color. He looked at the old man, then at the lane, then at his buddies, suddenly realizing his jokes had been aimed at the one person who had actually been watching. The old man didn't celebrate. He moved. He stepped to the mechanical barrier controls and raised the pop-up wedge halfway, not fully, not enough to crush a vehicle, but enough to force a stop and buy seconds. The trainee barked, "Hey, stop the van!" and sprinted a few paces after it, hand out, trying to command with voice what he had failed to command with procedure. The van slowed too smoothly, too controlled, and the driver leaned out his window with a forced smile. "Problem, officer?" he asked. The trainee's confidence tried to return, but it came out shaky. "Return to the canopy," he ordered. "We have a verification issue." The driver's eyes hardened for a flash, then softened again, acting. "My pass scanned green," he said. "We're late for a delivery." The trainee glanced back at the old man as if asking for help without wanting to ask. The old man stepped closer, staying in the camera view deliberately, and spoke to the driver in a calm tone that carried authority without rank. "Step out," he said. The driver's smile slipped. "Who are you?" he snapped. The old man didn't answer the ego question. "Step out," he repeated, and his eyes moved not to the driver's face but to the passenger's hands that had disappeared below the dashboard. The trainee noticed it a heartbeat later and felt his stomach drop. He raised his weapon halfway, not fully aiming but no longer joking. "Hands where I can see them," he commanded, voice cracking slightly. The driver's shoulders rose and fell as if measuring options. "This is ridiculous," he hissed. The passenger's head turned, and for the first time the trainee saw the cold calculation there, not confusion. The old man shifted his stance a half step, putting his body angle between the passenger's hidden hands and the trainee's exposed side, like someone who knew exactly how quickly a small motion could become a fatal one. "Look at me," the old man told the driver quietly. "Eyes up." The driver's gaze snapped to him, angry. "Move," the driver said through his teeth. The old man didn't move. The van's engine tone changed, subtle, a tiny rise in RPM, and the old man knew what that meant. They were about to bolt. He slapped the barrier control fully. The wedge rose with a heavy hydraulic groan, blocking the van's nose. The driver hit the brakes, tires chirping on concrete. For a second everything froze, airmen on foot stopping mid-stride, the gate guard in the booth holding his breath, the trainees' earlier laughter replaced by the sound of their own pulse. Then the passenger's door cracked open and the passenger lunged out, fast, low, trying to sprint back toward the public side where chaos would give cover. The trainee nearest him reacted late, stumbling, and the old man moved first again, not with youthful speed but with perfect timing. He hooked the passenger's wrist and shoulder in one controlled motion, turning him into the van's side panel and pinning him without slamming, efficient, practiced, humane. The passenger struggled, and the old man's worn boots planted like anchors. "Stop!" the old man said calmly, not shouting, and the calmness was scarier than rage. The trainee snapped handcuffs on with shaking hands, his pride now replaced by the realization that his training had been a script and the old man had been the reality. Inside the gatehouse, the supervisor shouted, "Hold them! Do not release! Patrol unit inbound!" The driver remained in the seat, staring forward, jaw clenched. The trainee barked at him to exit, and the driver complied slowly, eyes scanning for any gap. The old man watched those eyes and said quietly to the trainee, "Don't stand in front of the door line. Angle." The trainee obeyed automatically, no longer arguing. Sirens approached, and within minutes a response team arrived, weapons ready, pulling the driver out, securing the van. The trainees stood in stunned silence while the old man stepped back to the edge of the lane like he was returning a borrowed spotlight. One trainee finally whispered, "How did you?" But he couldn't finish. The old man looked up at the cameras again, then at the trainee, and said, "Because I don't watch IDs, I watch people." The gate felt different now, as if everyone suddenly understood that the camera hadn't caught the truth by itself. The truth had been caught by someone who knew how to use routine as a weapon against complacency. The base commander's duty officer arrived, followed by a small group of senior security leaders, and the gatehouse turned into a tight knot of radios, clipped voices, and controlled chaos as they verified the van's paperwork, checked the detainees' identities, and pulled the full camera timeline. The trainees stood off to the side, stiff and quiet, as if their bodies finally understood what their mouths had refused to. Inside the gatehouse, the duty officer replayed the footage on a monitor, the van approaching, the trainee scanning too fast, the old man leaning in, pointing at the photo, the trainee dismissing him, the old man tapping the alert button. The video didn't lie. It showed the mismatch, the passenger's hidden hands, the micro-expressions, the attempted bolt. Every second of it carved a lesson in bright digital clarity. One of the senior NCOs turned to the trainees, voice low and sharp. "Which one of you waved them through?" he demanded. The lead trainee's throat worked as he swallowed. "I did," he admitted, eyes down. The NCO looked ready to explode, but before he did, the duty officer held up a hand. "Where's the contractor?" he asked. The trainees glanced around, surprised, as if the old man might have vanished back into the background where they'd put him. But he was outside, already sweeping stray gravel from the lane like the world had simply continued. The duty officer stepped out and approached him. "Sir," he began automatically, then paused, uncertain why the word felt right. The old man gave a small nod. "Morning," he said, like they were discussing weather. The duty officer studied him closely. White beard, faded red shirt, worn boots, no visible medals, no rank, and then looked back toward the monitor inside where the footage still rolled. "That alert you tapped," the duty officer said. "It saved us from a bad day." The old man shrugged lightly. "It saved them from making it worse," he replied, glancing toward the trainees. "They'll carry it either way." The duty officer's radio buzzed with an update. The van had been modified, false paneling, suspicious devices, the kind of thing that turned routine into tragedy if it passed unchecked. The duty officer's face tightened. "We're lucky," he muttered. The old man's eyes stayed calm. "Luck is what people call it when they don't want to admit they missed the signs," he said quietly. A black SUV rolled up behind the gatehouse, distinct, official, escorted, and the gate personnel straightened. A general officer stepped out, accompanied by a command sergeant major. The general's gaze swept the gate, stopping on the detainees, the van, the gathered security staff, then landing, strangely, on the old man by the lane as if pulled by a magnet. The general slowed mid-step. His eyes narrowed. The command sergeant major walking beside him froze too, then whispered, "No, it can't be." The trainees watched, confused and suddenly terrified, as the general walked past everyone else, directly toward the old man with the broom. The old man looked up, and the smallest change touched his face, recognition, not surprise. The general stopped a few feet away, staring as if seeing a ghost from a place nobody on this base wanted to remember. "You're here," the general said, voice rough. The old man nodded once. "I'm here," he replied. General's posture shifted, the way a man's posture shifts when he moves from leadership to respect. The trainees held their breath. The general asked, "Did you flag the mismatch?" The old man nodded again. The general's jaw tightened, emotion controlled behind authority. "You always did see what others didn't," he said. The old man's answer was quiet. "I always listened when others talked," he replied, and the line hit the trainees like a slap. The command sergeant major glanced at the trainees, eyes hard. "These the ones who laughed?" he asked the duty officer. The duty officer hesitated, then nodded. The general's face turned colder, not cruel, but absolute. "Assemble them," he ordered. "Now!" The air around the gate seemed to compress. Radios kept chattering, but the tone changed. Less procedural, more ceremonial, as if something bigger than a stop had just occurred. The trainees' stomachs dropped because they sensed the shift. The cameras had caught the truth, yes, but the truth was about to catch them too. Who the old man really was, and what kind of service could teach a person to read a threat from a half-second glance and a quiet routine. The general ordered the gate area cleared to essential personnel and had the trainees form up along the inner barrier line, boots aligned, hands at their sides, faces pale with a shame that felt heavier than any punishment. Behind them, the modified van sat under inspection lights, doors open, technicians working carefully, and the captured footage played again inside the gatehouse like a silent judge. The general stood in front of the trainees, the command sergeant major at his side, and the old man stood slightly behind, trying to shrink, broom in hand, as if he wanted to slip back into routine and disappear. The general's voice was calm but carried the weight of consequence. "Today," he said, "we prevented something that could have killed people." He paused. "We also revealed something else, how quickly arrogance can turn a gate into an open wound." The trainees stared straight ahead, not daring to blink too long. The general turned slightly toward the old man. "This man tried to stop it before it reached your hands," he said, "and you laughed at him." He let the silence do damage. The lead trainee's eyes glistened, not from tears yet, but from the pressure of being seen. The general stepped closer to the old man, studying his face like confirming a memory. "You're the one from the checkpoint outside Sangin," the general said quietly, and the duty officer's head snapped up. The command sergeant major's jaw tightened. The old man didn't boast, he didn't correct, he just nodded once, the smallest admission. "Did what I could," he said. The general swallowed, eyes shining for half a heartbeat before discipline locked them down. "You pulled my driver out of a burning vehicle," the general continued, voice low and deadly serious. "You kept the gate from collapsing when everything else did." The trainees felt the ground tilt under their boots. They had mocked a man who had lived through the kind of day that this morning had almost become. The general took one step back, heels together, posture perfect. The trainees didn't understand what was happening until it happened. The general raised his hand and rendered a crisp salute, first salute, directed not at a flag or an officer, but at the old man in the faded red shirt. The gate seemed to stop breathing. Even the technicians working on the van paused. The old man hesitated, discomfort flickering across his weathered face like he wanted to refuse the spotlight, but then he returned the salute with slow, precise form that revealed training carved deep into muscle memory. The general lowered his hand and turned back to the trainees, voice sharpening. "This is what experience looks like," he said. "Not loud, not flashy, not begging for respect, just present." He pointed toward the canopy cameras. "Those cameras did catch the truth on their own. He used them, he saw what you ignored, and he acted while you joked." The command sergeant major stepped forward, voice like steel. "You will remember this," he said, "not because you're afraid of discipline, but because you're afraid of being the reason somebody doesn't go home." The lead trainee finally spoke, voice cracking. "Sir, we didn't know," he said to the general, then turned to the old man, unable to keep the words back. "We're sorry." The old man looked at him, calm, not triumphant. "Not knowing isn't the problem," the old man said softly. "Not listening is." The general's gaze swept the line of trainees and then snapped into command. "Attention," he ordered, and the trainees stiffened. "Render honors," he said, and one by one, then together, the trainees and gate personnel raised their hands in salute to the old man. Their hands trembled, not from fear of the general, but from the crushing realization of who they had mocked. The old man returned the salute once more, then lowered his hand and gripped the broom as if it anchored him back to the present. The general's voice softened again. "This gate is where routine becomes life and death," he said, "and today you learn that truth the safe way. Don't demand the hard way." The trainees held the silence, and for the first time all day, the laughter that had filled the morning felt impossible, as if the gate itself would reject it. When the formation dismissed, the base did not slide back into casual routine. It returned to motion with a new seriousness, like a man walking carefully after nearly slipping off a ledge. The general remained for a final review, issuing quiet directives, tighten verification procedures, review camera flagging protocols, retrain on behavioral indicators, and reinforce that any guard could initiate a hold when something felt wrong. But the real lesson was already planted. The trainees approached the old man slowly, not as hecklers now, but as students who finally understood that a gate wasn't just a place to stand, it was a place to decide. The lead trainee stopped in front of him, eyes down. "Sir," he said, and the words sounded different now, real. "I laughed at you, I waved them through, I almost—" His voice broke, and he didn't finish. The old man studied him with calm eyes that didn't excuse him but didn't destroy him either. "You almost learned the lesson in blood," the old man said quietly. "You're lucky you learned it in shame." The trainee nodded, swallowing hard. Another trainee spoke up, voice small. "How do you see it?" he asked. "How did you know?" The old man didn't launch into stories. He pointed at the lane, the barriers, the cameras, the mundane pieces. "Routine," he said. "If you do it right, you notice when it's wrong." He tapped his own temple lightly. "You listen for what doesn't match. A face doesn't match a photo. Hands don't match a story. A driver doesn't match a destination." The trainees stood very still, absorbing every word like it was the first real instruction they'd received. The old man added, "And you respect the boring parts. The boring parts keep people alive." The duty officer stepped out with a printed still image from the gate camera, freeze frame of the passenger's hand moving toward the floorboard, the exact moment the old man had caught. "This is what saved us," the duty officer said. The old man shook his head. "No," he replied. "What saved you was choosing to look." The general approached once more, lowering his voice so it felt personal. "You don't have to stay invisible," he told the old man. The old man's mouth tightened slightly. "I'm not invisible," he said. "I'm just quiet." The general nodded, understanding more than he said. "Then stay quiet," he replied, "but don't let them be careless around you." The old man glanced at the trainees and said gently, "They won't be." The command sergeant major watched the exchange and then addressed the trainees directly. "You will write statements," he said. "You will train harder, and you will learn what real professionalism is." No one argued, no one smirked. The laughter was gone for good. As the day wore on, the gate resumed flow, but now every trainee checked the ID twice, asked the extra question, watched the hands, and used the cameras like tools instead of decoration. The old man returned to his post, standing just off the lane with his clipboard, faded red shirt visible beneath the vest, worn boots planted on concrete. Vehicles rolled through, and he remained calm, scanning faces like weather, counting what didn't fit. When a young airman later came through with a forgotten pass and a bad attitude, one trainee didn't laugh or wave him through. He held him short, verified, corrected, and sent him on with firm professionalism. The old man noticed and gave a small nod, nothing more, and that nod carried more approval than any speech. As evening shadows stretched long across the barriers and the cameras blinked their steady red indicator lights, the trainees understood the final truth. The gate cameras could catch the truth, yes, but only if the people standing beneath them respected the quiet man who knew where to look.